Moving to the suburbs felt like the right move. Cleaner air, quieter nights, and a nice stretch of grass for my dog to roll in like he's being paid in belly rubs and mud. I'd just bought a house in a seemingly calm HOA-governed neighborhood. White fences, trimmed lawns, mandatory pastel shutters. You know the type. Everyone waves, but only from the wrist. Pleasant, polite, and just slightly step forward. It was all manageable, except for her. Karen. If HOA power tripping was an Olympic sport, Karen would have been the Michael Phelps of it. She didn't just enforce the rules, she became them. Her clipboard wasn't just a clipboard. No, that thing had the presence of a medieval scepter, blessed by the spirits of passive aggression and selective enforcement. You could practically hear it hum with HOA energy every time she strutted around in her orthopedic sneakers. I tried to ignore it. Really, I did. I figured a little neighborly weirdness was just the HOA tax you pay in exchange for living somewhere the mailboxes all match. I mean, sure, I got a warning letter for inconsistent mulch tone once, but I let it slide. Life's too short to argue about bark chips. My dog, Diesel, because he's built like a truck and has the emotional depth of a sleepy panda, was a large but gentle breed. The kind of dog you'd expect a knight to ride into battle, but who, in reality, mostly concerned himself with chewing exactly half of every tennis ball he owned and strategically napping across thresholds. He was HOA approved, calm, leashed, vaccinated, and a registered good boy TM. The incident started on a Tuesday. I remember because it was sunny, and I was having one of those rare suburban zen moments, sitting on my porch, coffee in hand, watching Diesel nap on the grass like a furry boulder. He wasn't even doing anything, just existing peacefully. Enter Karen. She appeared like a final boss in a beige tracksuit, being towed along by what looked like a glorified mop on a rhinestone leash. Princess was her name, which felt appropriate because this dog had the attitude of a toddler who's just been told no for the first time. She was small, yappy, and carried herself like she had diplomatic immunity. As they passed in front of my property, Princess locked eyes with Diesel. I swear, I saw her pupils turn into little crosshairs. With a shrill yip, she yanked the leash and broke free, charging straight onto my lawn like it was Omaha Beach and Diesel was the enemy bunker. Diesel, to his credit, did what he usually does when chaos approaches. He opened one eye, blinked once, and resumed chewing grass like he was on a spa retreat. Princess was not deterred. She got right up in his face, yapping so hard her ears were practically levitating. Diesel slowly raised his head, looked at her, looked at me, then let out a single, baritone woof. That's it. One bark. No growl, no teeth, no sudden moves. Just a sound wave that probably made Princess question every life choice that led her to that moment. She turned and bolted like her fur was on fire, tail tucked so far between her legs it could have brushed her eyebrows. She screeched across the sidewalk and jumped into Karen's arms, trembling like a Nokia on vibrate. Then came the screech. Oh, my God, Karen shrieked, clutching Princess like she was a fallen soldier. Your beast just attacked my baby. I set down my coffee. Karen, your dog ran onto my lawn, barked like a lunatic, and Diesel gave her a polite get lost. That's not an attack, that's a response. She's traumatized, she wailed, pointing an acrylic fingernail at Diesel, who had already gone back to sleep mid-lecture. That monster needs to be muzzled. Or removed. Or both. I think he's napping, I said. Wrong move. This launched her into a full 15-minute performance piece, titled, Why I'm the Only One Qualified to Interpret the HOA Bylaws, and also Why Your Dog is Satan. I tried to reason with her. I pointed out her dog was off-leash, that she trespassed, that the only one barking was her. None of it landed. Karen wasn't here for logic. She was here for justice, of course her justice. The yappy, self-righteous kind. Eventually, she stormed off, muttering something about making some calls. I assumed it would all blow over. After all, what was she going to do? File a complaint about her own dog trespassing? Spoiler, of course not. Because this wasn't just Karen being Karen. This was war. And Karen doesn't lose wars. Or so she thinks. The next morning, I woke up to something worse than a hangover. An emergency HOA meeting notice taped to my door in Comic Sans. Which, honestly, should have been a crime all by itself. It read like an over-dramatized script from a soap opera. Subject: aggressive canine incident. Immediate action required. Agenda: discussion of disciplinary action regarding unauthorized aggressive animal behavior resulting in emotional distress to another resident and their pet. If you're wondering, yes, she capitalized random words for dramatic effect. And yes, emotional distress was underlined in red pen. The meeting was scheduled for 7:30 p.m. in the community clubhouse, which I had always assumed was just a glorified storage unit with folding chairs. Turns out, it's where dreams and reputations go to die, at least if Karen has her way. I showed up 10 minutes early. Diesel stayed home, of course. I figured one emotionally scarred victim was enough for the HOA to process in one evening. When I walked in, Karen was already there, clipboard locked and loaded, standing like a traffic cop who'd finally caught someone going 26 in a 25 zone. She smiled at me. Well, technically her teeth moved, but the rest of her face stayed frozen in bureaucratic fury. The meeting kicked off with a painfully formal tone. "Let's begin with the incident report," said Greg, the HOA president, who always looked like he'd rather be watching golf. Karen, naturally, took the floor like she was giving closing arguments at the Supreme Court. "Last Tuesday," she began, already misting up, "my baby princess was nearly mauled in front of my very eyes." "Correction," I interrupted. "She ran uninvited onto my property, yapped at my dog, and then panicked when he looked at her funny." "Excuse me, I'm speaking," Karen snapped, with the kind of authority normally reserved for air traffic controllers or Bond villains. She continued, citing aggression, emotional trauma, and something called bark-based intimidation. She even whipped out a printed photo of Princess looking dramatically into the camera from beneath a fleece blanket, like she'd just survived an avalanche. The word survivor was written under it in glitter gel pen. Karen concluded by suggesting that Diesel be removed from the community immediately for public safety. It was so ludicrous, I honestly expected someone to start laughing. But the room was dead quiet. And that's when I realized something terrifying. Some of them were actually taking this seriously, which meant I had to start doing the one thing I hoped to avoid, playing the HOA game. I stood up, slowly. "Okay," I said. "Let's pretend for a second that Princess isn't the unhinged Chihuahua version of a war horn. Let's say Diesel was the aggressive one. Just for fun. Can anyone here tell me the last time they saw Diesel act aggressive?" Silence. I turned to Karen. "You've lived here how long?" 6 years, she sniffed. "And in all that time, you've never once filed a complaint about Diesel?" "No, because this is the first time he attacked someone." "Correction again," I said, smiling. "This is the first time someone watched your dog run onto private property like it was her turf, and then realized tiny dogs don't win standoffs with actual dogs." Greg raised a hand to calm things down. "Look, we'll take a vote later. But is there any proof of Princess being aggressive herself?" "Oh, Greg." Sweet, naive Greg. That was the moment. The switch in my head flipped. Karen had tried to drag my dog's name through the mud, and now it was time to dig all the dirt. I remembered something. A few weeks ago, the Johnsons down the street mentioned that Princess had nipped at their toddler. Nothing serious, just a quick snap, but they hadn't wanted to cause drama. At the time, it felt like standard HOA gossip. Now, it felt like ammo. I spent the next 48 hours channeling every ounce of suburban sleuth energy I had. Knocked on doors, asked questions, listened patiently while people vented. Turned out Karen and her precious baby had a reputation, one she'd kept buried under a pile of passive-aggressive thank you cards and strongly worded suggestion box notes. By the end of day 2, I had, for verbal testimonies of Princess being bitey, 2 written accounts of her slipping off leash and charging children, a ring cam video where she was seen pooping on Mrs. Latimer's hydrangeas while Karen pretended to check her watch. And most importantly, the neighborhood finally had a reason to fight back. It was like I'd cracked the HOA matrix. Suddenly, people who'd avoided conflict for years were texting me things like, She once fined me $25 for leaving my hose uncoiled. Let's end this. We were united. Not by war, but by annoyance. And so I compiled it all. Witness statements, signed and dated. A folder of photographic evidence. Even a formal petition. By the time I stapled the last sheet, it looked less like a complaint and more like a legal dossier. And next meeting? I was bringing the whole binder. Karen had started this mess by barking up the wrong tree. Now she was going to see what happens when that tree bites back. The next HOA meeting was no longer just a meeting. It had vibes. People brought snacks. A few even showed up early, dragging lawn chairs like they were tailgating for suburban justice. Karen strutted in precisely 7 minutes late, because of course she did, with Princess in a tiny carrier bag that said "Born Royalty" in rhinestones. A tactical move, no doubt. Sympathy optics. I was already seated, my evidence binder perched on the table in front of me like a loaded weapon. I'd even added sticky notes for dramatic effect. When you flip to tabbed evidence with the confidence of a prosecuting attorney, people listen. Greg, looking more exhausted than usual, called the meeting to order. He opened with, "Let's revisit the issue of canine conduct on community property." Karen immediately raised her hand like she was trying to hail a cab in a hurricane. "I just want to reiterate," she began, "that my baby is still traumatized. She hasn't barked in days. Days. She flinched at a leaf this morning." Some people nodded sympathetically. I stood. Time to drop the hammer. "I'd like to enter a formal complaint of my own," I said, lifting the binder with a satisfying thud. "In regard to Princess. And a consistent pattern of aggressive behavior spanning multiple neighbors and multiple incidents." Karen actually laughed. "What pattern? My Princess is an angel." I opened the binder. Tab 1, Incident Summaries. 4 pages. Neatly typed. Labeled with dates, times, and addresses. Each detailing how Princess had either bitten, barked at, or charged someone, or something, unprovoked. Tab 2, Signed Statements. 10 of them. All from neighbors who, until now, had kept quiet. Each one read with the kind of weary resentment you only get from people who've been fined for leaving their trash can out 30 minutes too long. Tab 3, Multimedia Evidence. I turned to Greg. "We've got video." I pulled out my tablet and tapped the screen. Up popped ring cam footage of Princess slipping her leash and charging at a delivery driver like a white fluffball possessed. Another clip showed her growling at Mrs. Gutierrez's grandkid while Karen sipped her smoothie and pretended nothing was happening. "Oh, for heaven's sake," someone muttered from the back. I wasn't done. Tab 4, the petition. Signed by 87% of the neighborhood, including, awkwardly enough, Karen's immediate neighbors on both sides. Greg adjusted his glasses. This is substantial." Karen's face had frozen somewhere between indignation and internal system failure. "Furthermore," I added smoothly, "I've already forwarded copies of this binder to Animal Control, our insurance underwriter, and the HOA's legal liaison. Not to mention the city's Community Safety Board. Just for transparency." That's when Karen's jaw did the thing. You know the thing. That stunned, unhinged fishmouth flapping people do when they're trying to summon words that won't come. You can't. This is slander." "Actually," said Greg, holding up one of the signed statements, "this is well documented. Legally formatted. Honestly kind of impressive." Karen exploded. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. She actually screeched. It was like someone had set off a car alarm inside a Macy's handbag section. "You're all just jealous," she shrieked, her voice hitting frequencies not yet classified by science. "Of me. And Princess. We represent class and standards, and you all want to tear us down." "Karen," I said, calm as a sleeping diesel, "it's not jealousy. It's accountability. You started this over one bark. And now, everyone's barking back." She stormed out mid-meeting. Greg tried to continue with the agenda, but it was like watching someone read a grocery list at a crime scene. The next morning, the HOA inbox was flooded. Not with support for Karen, but with relief. The people had spoken, and they wanted peace and quiet. 3 days later, a city representative showed up to perform an informal behavioral evaluation of Princess after several complaints were officially filed. He asked Karen a few questions, interviewed neighbors, and walked around the community. I heard from Nancy across the street that when he left, he handed Karen a recommendation list, which included keeping Princess leashed at all times, using a muzzle when in public, attending behavioral classes, and, if the situation didn't improve, relocating the dog to a more suitable environment. Karen? She allegedly stood there, clutching the paper like it was a death certificate, while Princess snarled at a passing butterfly. After that, nothing. Radio silence. No clipboard patrols. No warning letters. No mid-afternoon power walks. Her blinds stayed shut. Her porch lights never came on. It was like she'd vanished, absorbed into the very beige siding she once ruled from. It wasn't official, but Karen was done, and I had a feeling she wasn't going to stay quiet forever. For a week, the neighborhood felt different, lighter. It was like someone had finally lifted the beige fog of tyranny. I didn't see Karen. No sightings of Princess either. Just an eerie silence coming from her house, which normally crackled with righteous indignation and the faint squeals of that demon fur pom-pom she called a dog. Diesel, for his part, enjoyed the change. He spent more time on the lawn, snoozing under the sun like a retired war hero. Neighbors started waving longer, actually stopping for casual chats. Even Mr. Klein, who hadn't smiled since 1994, offered me a thumbs up one morning while power walking in socks and sandals. The fear was gone, but I wasn't naive. Karen didn't disappear. She was regrouping. I knew it the moment I saw the Facebook post. It was midnight. I was doom scrolling, half asleep, when it popped up on our HOA's private Facebook group, Karen's Final Stand. To all my neighbors, it began, yes, the quotes were hers. I can no longer continue living in a community that is so openly hostile to me and my sweet princess. We have endured false accusations, personal attacks, and slander of the highest order. I refuse to raise my fur baby in an environment of cruelty. Therefore, I have made the heartbreaking decision to leave this neighborhood and search for a more compassionate, dog-loving community. Karen Elaine Richards, HOA Chairwoman Emeritus, by moral right. Within minutes, the comment section was a glorious symphony of passive-aggressive emojis and barely veiled sarcasm. So sorry to see you go, but not really. Godspeed, Karen. And take your glitter poop bags with you. When's the yard sale? Asking for a friend who needs a clipboard. Alexa, play Ding Dong, the witch is gone. The post blew up. I screenshotted every comment and sent them to a group chat that had unironically named itself Diesel's Defense League. But the post wasn't even the kicker. The next morning, a red and white for sale sign appeared on Karen's lawn. Hand-painted, because of course she refused to use the standard HOA-approved sign. Underneath it, in tiny glittery cursive, selling due to hostile neighbors and unjust treatment of royalty. The sign stood there like a monument to martyrdom. The neighborhood? Oh, we were thriving. 2 days after the sign went up, someone, not me, but I have theories, started planning a block-wide, moving on potluck. The group text included a sign-up sheet. My name was already assigned to bring chili. Diesel was listed under VIP guests for legs. Karen never came out. For days, she was just a silhouette behind tightly shut blinds. Occasionally, we heard the frantic yap of Princess echo from inside, followed by the sound of something breaking. And then, one last time, she cracked. It happened on a Thursday. A city rep dropped by again to follow up on the earlier complaints. From what I later heard, thanks to Melissa, our neighborhood's unofficial intelligence agency, the conversation went like this. City rep, ma'am, have you implemented the recommended safety measures? Karen, she's fine. This neighborhood is the problem. City rep, we've had 3 more incidents reported since our last visit, including a bite to a mail carrier's pant leg. Karen, he was trespassing. Mail isn't a right. That was not the winning argument. 2 hours later, she posted again. This time, to her personal Facebook. My poor princess has been silenced and villainized. Even the government is involved now. We are surrounded by snakes and traitors. I will not be muzzled just to appease the dog haters. The comments section? A digital funeral pyre. Girl, you literally tried to get someone evicted over a bark. Unmuzzled? Kinda sounds like your problem. Can we get Diesel to run for HOA chair? That one got over 150 likes. The next day, she was gone. Just gone. No goodbye. No door slams. No clipboard farewell wave. Just a moving truck and the quiet sound of suburban serenity rolling back into place like it never left. But the final moment, the final moment, was art. I was walking Diesel that evening, enjoying the applause of every other dog owner we passed, when I spotted something near her mailbox. I walked over, and there it was. Her clipboard. Abandoned. Lying in the grass. The once sacred artifact of HOA oppression, now cracked down the spine, like it couldn't bear the weight of its own pettiness any longer. Diesel sniffed it. Then, with the theatrical timing of a Shakespearean actor, lifted his leg. I didn't stop him. The neighborhood was practically humming with joy. It wasn't just that Karen was gone, it was how she left. In disgrace. In chaos. In a cloud of glitter and entitlement that would take weeks to scrub from the sidewalks. The day after her departure, the HOA group chat was more active than I'd ever seen it. People were organizing, texting, coordinating. Someone suggested commemorating the moment with a ceremonial clipboard bonfire. Someone else offered to bring a karaoke machine. By mid-morning, it had escalated into a full-blown event. We called it what it deserved to be called. The Liberation Cookout. Burgers, ribs, desserts. Kids chalking "No More Karens" on the pavement. A banner that said peace, love, and leashes. Someone even made cupcakes with tiny edible clipboards on top. Diesel got a special bandana that read HOA Certified Good Boy in gold script. The energy? Immaculate. The vibe? Vindicated. I didn't plan on giving a speech, but somewhere between the grilled corn and a suspiciously strong lemonade, a chant started. Speech. 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 And look, when a crowd that includes 5 grandmas and 3 toddlers demands something, you give it to them. I cleared my throat and stepped up onto an overturned cooler. Diesel sat next to me like the stoic enforcer he was, tail slowly thumping. Friends, I said, and former HOA prisoners. Laughter. We survived something together. We stared down the clip beast, the gatekeeper, the self-appointed queen of compliance, and we won. Not with barks, not with growls, but with patience, documentation, and just the right amount of petty applause. I want to thank you all for trusting me when I said Diesel wasn't the enemy, for standing up when it was easier to stay quiet, for writing statements, signing petitions, and remembering that Princess may have been a royal, but this community is a democracy. Someone yelled "Preach" from the grill, and in honor of our shared battle, I looked down at Diesel. I turned this moment over to the real hero. I gave him the nod. Diesel stood up, looked at the crowd, and barked. Once. Deep, calm, final. The effect was instant. Cheering, laughing, clapping. People toasted him with plastic cups. Mrs. Latimer actually cried. Someone passed Diesel a hot dog without a bun, which he took with the dignity of a knight accepting a knighthood. Later that evening, as the party stretched into fireflies and dusk, I found myself back on my porch. Diesel beside me, tired but content. The stars were out. The lawns were quiet. No screeching. No random fines. No fear of HOA retaliation if your lawn flamingo leaned 2 degrees too far east. I checked the HOA Facebook group one more time before bed. The top post? New chair elections next week. Nominate your neighbors. Or yourself. Top comment. I nominate Diesel. Second comment. I second. He's got better judgment than half the board ever did. I smiled and closed the app. There was balance now. The scales of suburban justice had tilted back toward sanity. And it all started with one bark from the wrong dog, in front of the wrong house, on the wrong day. Karen thought she could weaponize a yap. But I had something stronger. A community. A clipboard's worth of receipts. And one very good boy. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.